What is up, friends? Welcome back. Today we're gonna be having a look at some composition devices from easy to hard, but also from useful and not so useful. Alright, so let's give this a go. First thing I want to talk about is pedal tones. Super easy, obviously, because it's basically just a single held note, but you know, it's super useful. So this is a pedal tone, right? And it could be in any range, any octave you like. And the beauty of it is that being a single note, you can basically do anything you like behind it, like so. Right, so you could play any scale behind it, and as I said, it works in any register. I tried something in the middle over there, but it doesn't have to be that way. For example, let's try something in a lower register, like low strings. Right, so you could play any scale you like, mix them up, you know, to make it more interesting, and pick different registers for the pedal tones, pick different instruments as well to suggest a different type of mood. So that was the first one, you know, pedal tones, super simple. My next one would probably be ostinatos, which is basically a repeated pattern, you know, any kind of pattern you like. So let me just grab this pedal tone, I'm gonna copy paste, and we're gonna play an ostinato over it. Step input, 16ths. So something like this is basically like a true bounce pattern that keeps repeating. Obviously, we've used a violin here, but we don't have to. Just like, you know, the pedal tone, this works across different registers. The core idea behind an ostinato is not that different, you know, from the pedal tone, as we basically have two static elements, with the ostinato being like literally a single idea that repeats, and the pedal tone is being a single note. And that's why when you combine them together, they don't sound that interesting. And I believe, you know, a more efficient way of using ostinatos would be in context with something else, maybe just to give a little bit more movement to like a chord progression, or basically to have an ostinato being part of a background texture or something like that. So I'm just gonna move to basically the third step, the third level of complexity, you know, if we can say so. Diatonic chord progression. We're gonna grab the same ostinato from before, just, you know, to give it some context, and just to make it a little bit more interesting, I'm gonna do some doublings, clarinet, and I'm gonna use harp and celeste as well, why not? Good, so that was 2 bars, we're gonna extend that. Let's add a couple of accents on flutes as well. Great, 2 bars, that's enough. And the reason I'm gonna be doing this is just to give it a little bit extra support for what we're gonna be doing with the chords now. So we said diatonic chord progression. What this means is basically a chord progression that sits within the same key. You could do anything you like, but some things will work better than others depending on the music you've written, you know, for the ostinato. And this can work on the other way around as well, right? So if you start from a chord progression and you want to add an ostinato over it, you should always try and keep in mind, you know, the chord tones that you have within the chord progression. Try to match those and write, you know, an ostinato that kind of fits it. So let's experiment with a couple of different things. I'm gonna grab, you know, a brass ensemble and strings ensemble. So something as simple as adding chords, can give shape to the ostinato and kind of makes it sound a little bit different depending on where it sits on the progression. We use some open voicings in the lower register, but it doesn't have to be this way. Let me try the same progression in a higher register, maybe within the same octave. Does it have to be this progression? Once again, it doesn't, It depends on what kind of pattern you have written. So let's try something else. Let's try a different kind of progression, maybe that doesn't start on chord 1. You can still be quite creative, by simply picking different chords within the same key, within the same scale. But let's say you don't want to. Let's say you wanna experiment with with a very different kind of mood. How do we do that? We have to bring it to the next level, which would be using modes. Let's talk about that. I want to try and explain this without taking forever. You can Google it, It doesn't. You're allowed to do that, yeah, if you're not exactly sure what I'm gonna be talking about. But very quickly, modes are basically different scales. So right now we're in the key of D minor, right? Starting from a different place, we basically get a different scale. And this is a concept you're probably already quite familiar because of the relationship between major and minor, right? So if we play the very same scale I played now, starting from an F, this is the major scale, but this is also known as the Ionian mode, right? So, and if we play any of these notes I just played right now, starting from different places, we basically get different modes as well. I don't want to spend too much talking about this. We could be here forever, yeah. If you're not exactly sure what I'm talking about, I highly recommend to Google it or search on YouTube. Yeah, there's loads of classes. Just for the sake of trying something different, I'm gonna grab some low strings and horns. That works because of the type of ostinato we have written, right? We have these 4 notes that are contained within the Dorian mode. And as long as these 4 notes are contained within any of the chord progressions that you pick, hopefully what you do is gonna work. Let's try something different. Let's try, I don't know, something with the major modes, for example. Could we try any of the modes from, say, a different scale? I don't know, like a harmonic minor scale, for example, for sure. So still works, kind of. It's a little bit more spicy, yeah, because we have a little bit more dissonance in between a few of these notes. We have the semitone in between D and E flat, but it's an option. It depends on the context of the music. So do we have to stick to one scale though? We could do anything we like, and that is going to take me to the next level, next device. That is chromatic mediants. What are these? What am I talking about? What are mediants? Mediants are basically thirds, right? The relationship of thirds between chords. You can have chromatic mediants and you can have diatonic mediants. I picked chromatic simply because we want to extend outside of the major or the minor scale, right? And diatonic mediants would sit within the scale. So let's try a couple of these. If we do it in D major, we could either go up or down a major or a minor third and play a major or a minor chord. Right, so let me explain. D to B flat, we're basically going down a major third from D and we are playing, just a major chord. We could play a minor chord as well. That's also an option. We could also go down a minor third and play a B major or a B minor as well. We could also go up a major third and play an F sharp major or F sharp minor, and we could go up a minor third and play either an F major or an F minor. Right, it's quite interesting sound. It sounds very Hollywood. It's something you've heard countless times in many film scores. So let's try it again. Let's try something different, maybe something minor. So that's chromatic medians. There's quite a few of them, as we said before, yeah, and I highly encourage you to experiment with this idea and find the ones that you like. Do we have to stick to a particular tonal center though? Not necessarily. And that's when polychords come into play. What are polychords and why am I, pushing them closer to the end of the video? The whole idea behind polychords is actually quite simple. It's quite literally two or more chords stacked on top of each other to basically create a very complex kind of sound. Yeah, if this idea is so simple, why is it near last? Simply because this sound is really quite complex and dissonant, and it may take you quite a bit of experimentation to find the polychords that you like and the right context to use them. So for example, we talked about chromatic medians before, so let's try a couple of those and let's try to make them into some polychords. So if you remember, we had a D and a B flat, right? So if we stack these two chords on top of each other, we basically get this really complex sound, right? That is a polychord. It's quite literally a B flat over a D flat. And what about the second one? We had a D minor going to an F sharp minor. So let's see if we can make a polychord out of these two. Here's how it sounds now. And also something interesting you could do is flip them, right? So if we take this first chord, B flat over D, and we flip the two chords, we basically get this instead. That is a D major over B flat. And the same for the other one. So let's record some music. There we go, here's how it sounds like. So it's quite a mysterious sound, and it goes very well together with, harp and celeste. That could use some quantizing actually. And also some arpeggiation in the woodwinds. And if you put all these together, it kind of creates this very mysterious sort of sound. And since it's quite a dense orchestration, if you want to write like a lead part on top of it, what tends to work very well in this context can be, maybe like a French horn in conjunction with an English horn. Right, you heard this sound like 1,000,000,000 times. It's in countless Williams scores and it's super effective. The last thing I want to talk about today is extended harmony, which is putting all these things together, maybe without polychords, but basically combining, modes with, diatonic progression and some medians as well. Right, so it's quite colorful, quite different from anything else we've tried, combines a few of these elements, mostly some medians and some modal mixture, and yeah, it kind of makes for a more interesting sound, maybe. And of course, if you want to add a lead part to it, maybe in the middle register, you could get rid of the ostinato and do something maybe on the first violin together with a French horn. Not my best melody, but you get the idea. Something quite interesting is the order, right, of these devices. We went from easy to progressively harder and harder, you know, arguably, of course. But this does not necessarily mean that easy is not useful, because you may have come to the same conclusion yourself, but, you know, the easiest ones are probably the more useful ones, right? Because using an ostinato or using a pedal tone is something that you're gonna be doing a lot of times. Polychords or using chromatic mediants and extended harmony, not necessarily as much, right? So I think it's quite interesting that, you know, if I had to rank all of these devices in the order of usefulness, probably the list would go exactly the same way, you know, starting with a pedal tone, ostinatos, super useful, of course. Diatonic progressions and then modes, chromatic medians also can have their own specific use. Polychords, very specific use. And extended harmony arguably could be an exception because, you know, can make use of a few of these combined together, but this is not necessarily something you're gonna wanna do all the time, or mixing all these devices together just for the sake of it. That's everything for today. If you wanna have a more in-depth look into this Logic session, you can find that on my Patreon page, alongside other session files and more extra educational resources as well. If you're interested in learning more about composition in general, you can check out my course, 20th Century Orchestral Writing, that teaches you to write in the style of classic Hollywood. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hit the like button if you did, and subscribe if you're new to the channel. Leave a comment below if you have any question, and I hope to see you on the next one. Bye.